Welcome to today's podcast, Intimacy Mastery. Today we are honored to introduce Andrea Barnes, a luminary in the fields of sexuality, consciousness, and personal transformation. With a Master of Health Science and Sexual Health and over 2 decades of experience, Andrea's journey is marked by a profound commitment to guiding others towards self-awareness and empowerment. Andrew's groundbreaking methodologies include tantric body diamoring and orgastic breath dance meditation have reshaped the landscape of holistic healing. His authored works such as The Relationship Map Guidebook and Demystifying Female Genitalia illuminate complex subjects with clarity and depth. Beyond accolade, Andrew's work is anchored in trauma-informed care and consent, ensuring safe and transformative experiences. Today, we delve into Andrew's 2-year restoration process, a transformative journey of accountability and growth. We explore the challenges faced, the lessons learned, and how this process has reshaped his practice. Moreover, we discuss the invaluable insights gained from Andrew's restoration journey, from fostering holistic healing environment to prioritizing trauma-informed approaches. We uncover lessons applicable to all facilitators in the realm of Tantra. Join us as we navigate the depth of restoration and transformation with Andrew Barnes. Thank you, Andrew, for joining us today. We're really excited to have you.
Thank you. It's nice to be here with you.
I appreciate your presence, and I appreciate you. The topic of today, really powerful, really important for all of us in our community to listen, to pay attention, and to give ourselves permission to learn from it. So,
Great.
our first question that we have for you today is, can you share your experience of undergoing an accountability process facilitated by a mediation agency?
Yeah, that's a big question. I needed to do an accountability process a long time ago, but unfortunately, I wasn't able to find someone to do that process with because it requires people that are very skilled in this type of mediation, obviously, given the sensitivity of what's involved. And so I was very fortunate to find an amazing team called Safe Mediation. And, for me, the doing an accountability process was like having a massive mirror held up in front of me. And it was uncomfortable, to say the least, at times. But it was very, very important to be able to go through that process and give people that I'd caused harm to an opportunity to share about that and to try and create some kind of healthy resolution in those experiences. And so as challenging as it was, I'm very grateful for having that experience and also going through the process with professional mediators who are able to facilitate these very sensitive topics and situations in a very professional and empathetic way to give people that I had harmed over the years an opportunity to be heard and to be seen and to have an opportunity to try and find some type of resolution. So for me, it's going through an accountability process with professional mediators is an essential part of doing an accountability process. I really don't think you can do it on your own or just with a group of friends doing an accountability process for you, or just saying on social media, I'm available for an accountability process. If anyone needs to talk to me, please contact me. That's just very different to having a structured process with professional mediators. It's two different worlds. And so I'm definitely an advocate now of accountability processes. Mine was around 2 years, and it formally ended about 1 year ago, but it's still continuing. And, you know, I'm also moving into being an advocate in the sense of providing support for people that need to do accountability processes, because as, you know, we've talked about in the past, there's a lot of people in the tantric and the sexuality fields that need and are wanting or needing to do accountability processes, but don't really know how to begin or what's involved in it. And, you know, I think that that can scare people away from beginning an accountability process. So I'm going to be offering people coaching that want to do accountability processes to support them into the process, because it's so important and it's so needed in the Tantra world. Like, as I said, primarily it's to provide support for people that have been harmed through experiences. But it as a facilitator, it gives people, and myself included, it gives us so much awareness about a lot of topics that unfortunately, you know, we weren't aware of with regards to power differentials and mixed role relationships, and really understanding the nuances of informed consent, like going through an accountability process and having an amazing supervisor. And I'm very fortunate and so grateful to have an amazing supervisor, Betty Martin, for the last sort of 3 years, to really guide me into the really deeper understanding. And I'm still, you know, I still have a lot to learn, but it's been an invaluable and challenging process for sure.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I believe that accountability is a really powerful alchemical journeys that kind of like strip away all these limitations, all these things that not serving us as human beings, and help us to polish us, right, to be in connection with ourselves at a deeper level. And from watching your journey and also, you know, holding spaces here for accountability in my area, I can say that it's not easy. It's not easy just to even show up to an accountability process. It can be very scary. It can be very you may feel at one point that you just want to go and be like 6 feet on the ground and you want to disappear, and you just want to be taken by the aliens, and like you just, because it feels like so overwhelming, and it's like the sense of like, I don't know with you, but it's like when I put myself in those positions, that because I call my team to hold me accountable of things, and when I screwed up, or when I mess up, or when I do a demo, or and I cross a violation, that people would think that it was not a violation. They can justify it. I could justify. I can make excuses for everything. We're really good at that.
Yeah.
Um, but having that courage to call ourselves out, or to have others to call us out and say, yes, I
Yeah.
fucked up. I'm human.
Yep.
And just that, it can be, I can feel it in my body, can feel so like devastated in a way that is like, oh my God, I did something wrong. They're not going to love me. They're not going to like me anymore. They're going to cancel me out. You know, I'd rather to be dead than be canceled out, or be like disconnected, or people don't really don't see me and have.
Right.
So I can really honor you for that, because it's not an easy journey.
Well, it shouldn't be an easy journey for the practitioner or the facilitator that has caused harm. It should be a very difficult and very challenging and very uncomfortable experience. And that's just the truth. And, you know, I can't tell you how many dark nights of the soul I've had in the last few years, and I needed them.
Mm.
And, you know, things can pull us down or they can cause us to step up. And I'm trying to use these experiences to step up and become a better person and a better facilitator of the type of retreats that I run.
Mhm.
But also imagine, you know, we're talking about how difficult it is for someone who needs to participate, who needs to go through an accountability process. So imagine how difficult it is for someone that's been harmed to come into a process. And so that's another reason why I was saying earlier that I don't really think you can do a proper, credible accountability process with just a group of your friends mediating it, or you just saying, I'm open, please contact me. You know, having the structure of professional mediators where there's a process that everyone needs to follow to create that empathy, that safe space for sharing and for healing. It's essential. And so, yeah, it is very challenging, and it's lovely for you to say kind words to me, but the reality is I needed to do the accountability process. And so I'm grateful that I had the opportunity. And it doesn't make me like a hero or something for doing an accountability process, because as you said, I fucked up, and this is me trying to right those mistakes. So there's nothing heroic about it. It's just an essential thing if we want to provide an opportunity for healing and also make ourselves better people. That's what I really think it's about. And someone a while ago asked me, how do you know when you've been through an accountability process? And I reflected on that, and for me anyway, I think going through an accountability process really helped me to take full responsibility for the experiences. Whereas in the past, myself and other people that I talk to that I think need to do an accountability process, or they're wanting to do one but afraid of going through the process, it's very easy for the facilitator to try and position themselves as a victim. And this, it happened because of this, and they did this, and they said that, and it was this situation, and lots of excuses as to why things happened. And I think for me, going through the accountability process, which I'm not finished, obviously, formally, like I have formally finished it, but informally, it's a never-ending evolution, hopefully. For me, it came to the point where there's no excuses anymore. Mm-hmm. Like, I was the facilitator. I was the person who was supposed to be providing the experiences, understanding power differentials and understanding multiple role relationship dynamics and the effect that can have on people. I was the one that was supposed to really know the deep nuances of informed consent. And unfortunately, like many sort of people that have been doing this for a long time, we really didn't know those things. And that's not an excuse. And that's why I decided to go through the accountability process, to get an amazing supervisor like Betty Martin, who's so wise about all of these topics. And, she cares more about telling me the truth than she does about hurting my feelings. And I'm grateful for that, as uncomfortable as it can be at times. So, I think that these are the things that if people are considering going through an accountability process, that we really need to understand that this is ego deflation at depth. And that's a good thing.
Beautiful. And I love that you mentioned, okay, it is really hard for the practitioner, the facilitator, the person that committed the error, the mistake, that fuck it up, to show up to an accountability process, how difficult it's going to be for the person who had been harmed. And from, watching, observing, and being in the BDSM communities or even the Tantra communities, like the fear of the victim to not being heard, to not being seen, to be gaslighted, because that is something like, it's always, present, and sometimes the dynamic where, like, how do I know that if I'm gonna come forward, are you gonna listen to me? Are you gonna really believe me? Are you gonna really understand where I'm coming from? Are you really going to, is it really worth it coming forward and sharing? And I have witnessed how traveling is, like, how chaotic that can be for the individual, where they don't feel safe to even say anything. And sometimes they're like, because they have families, because sometimes they have partners and children, and maybe, especially in these topics of intimacy and Tantra or activity, sometimes even the families don't know, they had been involved in like tantric gatherings or
Right.
sessions or anything like that. So how can I come forward and be in this process, and my family doesn't know about this, my partner doesn't know about this, my children doesn't know about this.
Right.
It could be very very tricky for the victim to really be able to come forward, like not from a place of courage, but from a place of, I'm going to be seen and heard, and I'm going to be supported in this journey and not be alone. It could
Yeah.
be really, really, really powerful journey for them as well,
Absolutely.
mentioning that.
Absolutely. And that's once again, why I think having professional third party mediators, like for me, it was Safe Mediation, who I think are exceptional at what they do. Uh, they provide that opportunity and they hold the space for that opportunity. And it's an amazing experience. It's very powerful, very deep, very healing in so many ways.
Thank you. So, in what ways do you believe accountability processes contribute to the healing and resolving issues within the Tantra community?
As I touched on just earlier, like many years ago, we were like a bunch of cowboys, sort of, and cowgirls, I should say, or cow people, let's say. What are people called nowadays? Anyway, and we believe we had this very powerful message that we wanted to take to the world, and it is a powerful, beautiful message, but it wasn't refined, and it didn't have the depth of understanding around the topics that I mentioned earlier, like power differentials and informed consent on a very deep level, and understanding the dynamics of mixed role, multi-role relationships and how that can affect situations. And so the need, I think, for accountability processes to become an integral part of the Tantra community is without saying. It needs to become inherently natural in the communities. And that's, why I want to, become an advocate for accountability processes and support people into the process. Because I think it really needs to be like, we can go and we can learn all about energy and about cultivating and circulating our sexual energy through our body and having these profound altered states of consciousness experiences. And they are incredibly beautiful and incredibly powerful. But if we don't have all of these other things there to create the grounding and the safe space and the stability, then it can very easily unravel into something unhealthy. And I think that, that's happened in the past. And fortunately, there's a lot of amazing information that is coming into the Tantra communities now.
Mm-hmm.
And, Betty Martin's Wheel of Consent and so many other people are bringing in powerful information that we really have to integrate into the essence of what we're doing. And, that requires a transition. Like over the last several years, I've really had to change how I facilitate retreats. Like in the past, I kind of describe my retreats as teenage Tantra courses because they were very focused on powerful, intense apex experiences. And sure, that's an amazing thing to have, but it can very easily become entertainment rather than a deep spiritual practice of really connecting with your essence and being able to share that essence in your relationship. And so there can also be a pressure on needing to create this intense experience for people. That's why some people are coming on their retreats. But that can also then override the need for creating safety, groundedness, and stability within the experience. And so, I had to reshape how to facilitate these types of powerful events and integrate all of these things so that they're a part of the fabric of the retreat. Informed consent, clear communication, boundary setting, separating and not letting mixed or multi-role relationships happen during retreats or after retreats. Like, so many things have to be weaved into these things. And so, you know, it's not enough for us just to learn about cultivating and expanding sexual energy and supporting people to do that. There's so much that we really need to integrate.
You are speaking medicine to my soul. I appreciate
Oh, great.
because and I want to ask you something about informed consent in a little more detail in a second, but it really means a lot to me to hear from another facilitator that at one point we have become entertainers of energy, arousal, and awakening, and sometimes even, you know, unconsciously we may have fallen in this thing about creating entertainment for our audience, for a
Right.
participant, or student. So having the
Right.
incredible experiences that the neurochemicals in the brain bring them to this ecstasy, euphoric moment when they feel like, wow, this is like something I have never experienced in my life. At one point, I really want to say that sometimes that could be very entertaining, you know, for the individual, because there's not a level of integration. There's not a slowness of the process. There's like a continuity, a consistency. There's not like a flow. It's not has being intentional. How
Yeah.
they prepare themselves, they go into the journey and they follow through. So I really appreciate you mentioning that, because yes, even for myself, I can say that there's a part of me that sometimes want to have that entertainment moment with participant where everybody's like, wow, because that feed my ego, right?
Right.
And
It does. And sometimes we could even feel pressured
yes,
to perform and to create this high impact experience for people because we think that's what they're coming for. And
hmm
some people are coming for that. But realistically, we have to create a very strong foundation. And that foundation is based in informed consent, communication, boundaries, clear, you know, clarity, keeping and being aware of power differentials and facilitating the retreats. With that as the foundation, in my experience, in the last number of years, as I've transitioned into more and more into this, that people can still have these very profound, deep, and beautiful experiences, but they're able to take them home and sustain that experience within their bodies and within their nervous system for longer and more safely, because it was them creating the experience for themselves. Whereas when I used to run teenage Tantra courses, I was creating this experience for people. And so when they would go home, they would often, after the peak, would have a collapse because it wasn't their experience. And so you mentioned about needing to build. And yes, we need to create this foundation so that then when we start to build into these very powerful energies, that people have that foundation there to hold them, not just on the retreat, but when they go home from the retreat. And that's a big part of it, because these powerful energies, if we don't know how to harness them, if we don't know how to ground ourselves while we're experiencing these energies, then it can be disturbing,
yeah,
especially after the experience. And
yeah,
so, you know, creating this foundation makes it possible for people to integrate these experiences in their relationships more when they go home.
yeah. It's what we call the 72 hours integration time. You
Right,
have that integration time and you still have that follow up with participant of like where they are at, how they doing, like what comes up. We're being available for them to, if anything come up in you know, in a
right,
month from now, to be able
right.
to offer something that help them to continue the grounding element of integration. And
Yeah,
it is really, really important. So let's just talk about informed consent, because everybody talks about consent, right? Even myself, I've been talking about consent. Consent is real, until I listened to a talk and, you know, a presentation too, like, and it was about informed consent, and it was like a lot a higher level of consent. It's interesting to know about consent, but informed consent is like, talk a little bit about that, because it's a difference between the both of them.
Well, yeah, I mean, consent is yes or no, but informed consent is going much deeper into ensuring that the person is fully aware of what the experiences involve beforehand, but also that they have the capability of consenting. You know, like I even call it a lot of the time trauma-informed consent, because we also have to take into consider, as a facilitator, we have to take into consideration the person's past experiences, you know, because their level of unresolved trauma can also affect their ability to consent to something, and can they are they ready to handle that experience? And so we need to really be aware of each individual as much as possible, provide as much clarity beforehand, give them options. They can opt in for experiences or they can opt out of experiences, rather than saying, okay, we're just going to do this now. We need to create a framework where we provide space for people to choose. And we need to do that in a way so that there's no group pressure for them to opt out of an experience if it's not feeling right for them. So I think another important part of informed consent on my retreats is that the receivers, during like a body de-armoring session, they're actually guiding the givers of the de-armoring sessions now. In the past, we sort of, I followed more of an allopathic approach, which was that the practitioner knows more and the receiver knows less about the experience. And so the practitioner is giving and doing and making the decisions about what happens and doesn't happen during the session. And the receiver is, you know, in this allopathic model, is subordinate to that in a sense. Of course, they could always say no, but they're following the lead of the practitioner or the giver. But, you know, being aware of informed consent, it's now participant facilitated or participant led. So they're actually guiding what happens during the session. And they're saying, you know, this, not this. They're talking about the pressure that's applied. So I'm not deciding how much pressure to apply in a de-armoring session, for example, the receiver is. And so for me, this is all part of informed consent, is creating all of that clarity and awareness beforehand, providing options for them to participate or not participate, and for it to be participant led. So they're guiding their giver in through the process.
It is a beautiful and powerful dynamic, what you mentioned in here, an aspect of what I would call it the feedback within the journey itself. And what it happens, and I witnessed a lot, is that in the Tantra realm, also in the BDSM realm, because I work with both, is that there is this misperception that if you are the receiver and you're giving feedback, sometimes people feel like uncomfortable, they don't feel sure about it, because they feel like if I give it too much feedback, it's something wrong with me. I'm trying to tell the person what, you know, I'm like trying to tap from the bottom, as we call it on BDSM, or
Right.
I'm telling the person who they're not doing a good job, so they're gonna be upset at me, and they're not gonna want to work with me anymore. They're gonna want to explore with me. So they don't feel like they feel comfortable to actually give proper feedback of what's going on in their journeys, because
Right.
sometimes we have this belief system, these limitations that, and at the same time, it's not encouraged, believe it or not, especially in the BDSM world, that this belief system that, you know, that it's unfortunately, like, it's not the dominant dynamic, but more the domineering dynamic, that where abuse sex dominant, as we call it, is that, they don't give the opportunity for the sub, or for the person who's receiving the opportunity to actually express and give feedback, because they don't want
Right.
to do that. It's like, oh, I
Right.
already did my negotiation, or sometimes even the dump don't want to ask for feedback because, or to check in with a person all the time because there's all the belief system that if I'm checking in all the time, if I'm checking in,
Right.
actually I'm not good dom, or I'm not a good top, or I'm not a good facilitator. So if I'm constantly checking in, it may send a signal that I am not good, or I'm not confident, or all these belief systems that
Yeah.
come in ways that it doesn't allow
Right.
this feedback to happen.
And I think that that's one of our roles as facilitators, is that we need to create this context of understanding before any type of touch experiences happen, so that everyone is fully aware that this is how it's going to happen. And so on my de-armoring retreats now, the receivers aren't giving feedback to the givers, they're guiding the givers from the beginning of the session. Actually, before any touch happens, the receivers are already guiding the givers in the process. They're sharing what they want, what they don't want, what the boundaries are, what's okay, what's not okay, what they consent to, what they don't consent to. And then from the beginning to the end of the session, the receiver is guiding, which is more than giving feedback. Now, feedback is after something has happened. Guiding them is before anything happens. And so this sort of participant leading is very empowering. And, that to me is essential, especially in the beginning of de-armoring or any type of touch therapy, is that this is very empowering for the receiver to be able to guide the experience. Now, that can evolve over time into something that's more intuitive, but I think that creating that foundation that I mentioned earlier is essential for any type of touch therapy, especially in the sexuality world, because once that strong foundation has been laid, where communication, boundaries, empathy, informed consent, all of those things are in the structure of the experience, then it can become more intuitive, because the receiver is hopefully by then at a stage where they can communicate when and if they need to. They can guide when and if they need to. But that needs to be the focus primarily.
And I see the power. Thank you for helping me to correct the aspect of the language of guiding during the journey and feedback after it. I appreciate that. And I can see the power of both. And I can see the power where the guiding, when you're guiding as the receiver, it can be a very empowering experience because, and especially for the person who is given to follow through that, I can see where the healing can happen at a deeper level because they are being heard, they are being seen. The person is following through, and maybe they heals those elements where in the past maybe they have a trauma around that, and how much more healing it for them to guide it for them, and also they're conscious, they're aware, they are fully also they are the one, the guidance, so they're also responsible of their own journey, right? So it's a little bit more empowering, and yeah, I can see how powerful that could be for the receiver even more.
Betty Martin has said to me numerous times, every person has some level of trauma. And so as a facilitator, I need to be aware, and everyone else I believe needs to, that everyone that's participating in our events has some level of trauma, and we need to accommodate that. We need to be aware of that, which is why we need to create this very strong foundation in trauma-informed consent, et cetera, et cetera.
So as a facilitator, what do you think that we need to must have to create safe experiences?
I think we need to be able to adapt the experiences to suit the individuals, right? So I make it clear to people, I'm not a trauma therapist. If someone has a level of unresolved trauma that is overwhelming for them, I don't think it's a good idea to come to a tantric event or have a tantric session. I think they need to seek qualified help from a trauma therapist or a psychotherapist, someone who's trained to support people to heal trauma. It's a very specialized field, and we have to be really careful, I believe, in the Tantra world to not promote what we do as healing trauma. You know, there might be some, or there are some people in the Tantra world that are qualified trauma therapists as well. That's a different situation, but I don't know. I only know a couple of people in the Tantra world that actually have a qualification in trauma therapy. So unless you're qualified and trained in it, you can't say that your courses heal trauma. So I think that that's something we really need to be aware of. But being trauma informed, which is what I'm really striving to be as much as possible, means that we adapt our exercises and experiences to suit individuals. So of course I have an idea of what's going to happen on the retreat, and I have these experiences that move everyone through the retreat, and each experience prepares people for the next experience, right? But the skill of facilitation is to be able to adapt it to the group that I'm facilitating, but also adapt it for individuals in the group, because some people might be very experienced and have done a lot of resolution around their trauma, and they're capable of fully participating in an experience, but other people may not be. Now, I'm not a trauma therapist, so I can't support them to heal their trauma, but what I can do is adapt the experience to suit where they're at, so that they can have an experience where they can remain grounded and safe and be able to guide the experience to stay in their autonomy and in their agency during the experience. And that, I think, is the essential role of a trauma-informed facilitator. And it doesn't matter what field you're in, but I think that that's really, really important.
Beautiful. And when it comes to, for us, support, because one of the things that sometimes I would say mistakes that we do as facilitators is that sometimes we go into this belief that we're alone, that we, God forbid I ask for help, because if I ask for help, I'm weak, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah, been there.
we've been there, done that, like, and we have to overextend ourselves, we have to overdo, over deliver, over give, over this, and we get exhausted,
Right.
and we get drained out, and we get like, and then we don't even have our own full cup, and we come from empty
Right.
cup to facilitate.
Right.
What do you feel or recommend that is crucial for us as facilitators? What are the strategies or the things that
Yeah.
we must do as well, what to take care of ourselves and reach out for help? Or you talk about a lot about support, so I would like
Yeah.
to talk more about that.
Yeah. So as I said earlier, I have someone who's a supervisor, Betty Marston. And one of the things that I've been doing with her is, after I facilitated a retreat, I have a list of things that happened during that retreat, a list of questions that have come up for me about how can I fine tune this experience to make it more trauma informed, so that I can adapt it to suit individuals on the retreats. And so I go through and have sessions with her, and we talk about that retreat and develop new ways of creating these experiences. That to me is so invaluable, because, as you say, it can be very lonely and very isolating to just be facilitating retreats and to not have that type of feedback. That a bullshit detector is what a supervisor can be at times. But they can also call us on if we are burning out, if we are doing too much, because it's very easy to burn out in this field. And, something that I wasn't even aware of, and I don't think we talk about it enough, is secondary trauma that facilitators and practitioners get. If we're working with people's emotions regularly all the time, we can get this secondary trauma. Our nervous system starts to vibrate at that frequency of that emotion that we're working with all of the time. And if we're not doing things to release that, then that trauma can build up in us as a secondary type of trauma.
Yeah.
And so, getting feedback, having a support network of people that care more about telling you the truth than they do about hurting your feelings or stroking your ego, is really beneficial because they can call you on burnout. They can call you on, secondary trauma. They can call you if you're going into some kind of messiah complex, which is quite, it's quite tempting and easy to go into thinking that you're special because you are creating these and supporting people to have these very special experiences. And you get a lot of validation from people about that. And so, it's very easy to become a bit narcissistic or, in worst case scenarios, going into this sort of savior complex, messiah complex. So having a network of people that will tell you the truth is very important. And it's something that I really value now.
And not just the messiah complex, but also the hero. The hero
Yeah,
complex.
the hero complex. There's lots of different names for it, but basically it means, disconnecting from the truth of who you are, which is you're just a normal person, but you do have some skills in a particular thing. And you're really just there to provide people with an experience that's safe and supportive for where they're at. But yeah, if we're left to our own devices and we take in all of this validation without getting honest feedback, then, I think we're setting ourselves up to go into this hero complex or the messiah complex.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. When you talk about the second trauma, sometimes we experience what I call the second-hand smoke. They don't know, like you have the second-hand trauma aspect of it because
Yes.
growing up in in a very toxic environmental home, dysfunctional home, the children will become and absorb the abuse, even if you're not getting
Exactly.
physical, emotional abuse from that your dad is doing to your mom or your mom doing to your dad or that whole
Right.
toxic dynamic, the children experience that secondhand abuse.
Yeah.
And sometimes like because you're little, you don't know, you can't regulate it. And because the parents step with each other, you don't know who to go to ask for help, to support, because
Right.
that's it. You say something, they're gonna come after you. So
Right.
it's a really great topic.
Yeah, it's very important. And this is common knowledge in psychotherapy and trauma therapy and all of those things. But in the Tantra world, for some reason, it's not. I mean, it's getting talked about now out of necessity, but for a long time, it wasn't in our frame of reference. We didn't have an awareness about this because we were so focused on this other thing. And unfortunately, a lot of us don't have qualifications in those fields where they teach people about these types of things. And so we really need to integrate it. People are starting to run some really great courses. Shashi Saluna is running some really great courses about being more trauma informed and trauma aware. I haven't done the course myself, but I've heard that it's amazing.
Yeah.
And so I've done other courses now in being trauma informed. I'd like to do hers at some stage. So it's happening.
Yeah.
And yeah,
have
people
a
like yourself who are really passionate about it are really driving this. It's great.
We have our own teach training, that Francesca Gentile, who's a clinical sexologist, and she's well into.
Oh, great.
We also have that training of 6 months. And one of the greatest thing, being in this realm, even all my productions right now, is like we have what we call to be a member of a Temples Alliance. You do a 2 hours trauma informed orientation.
Oh, great.
With
Wow.
everyone on the same page.
Yeah.
And we talk about trauma, and we talk about neurobiology, and we talk about the science behind King BDSM and also Tantra. And from the way that I like to teach it more from the somatic therapeutic perspective of these practices,
Right.
because they can be
Yes.
healing, and how important intention and like how important the whole feedback loop is about
Yeah.
72 hours. So we're doing now more consciously the work, but it's taking time, and it's a process. It's a process, and sometimes I can feel, as the creator of all of this, I can feel a little challenging, right? And but I can see the reward, like the reward of and what I love, to be honest with you, Andrew, that so far we launched it in September, the whole membership, the whole alliance aspect of it with the trauma informed orientation, and we have over 300 members that have gone through the 2 hours.
Wow.
So
Amazing.
that tells me that, people are really interested on it. At the
Right.
beginning, I thought that, oh my God, who's gonna want to do this? And it's so interesting that those people that they really want to be in those safe containers, they will take
Right.
2 hours just to be
That's
informed.
fantastic.
And it is a process. It is a process that I highly recommend everyone, participants, facilitators, to learn something about trauma because
It's
it
so essential.
it can be really life transforming. Life
Yeah.
transforming.
Yeah. Yeah.
So we have a retreat coming up in May, the Tantric
Uh-huh.
Yammering 2.0, like I like to call
Yeah.
it.
2.0, yeah.
Tell us a little bit about this experience because it's a retreat for personal growth experience. It's not a training,
No, it's not a practitioner training. That's right.
not a practitioner training. Unfortunately, in the past, I would say that some people go to the retreat, they learn this thing here and there, and all of a sudden they put themselves out there like experts of tantric body
Right.
armor. And
Yeah.
I want to honor your work and clarify that. So tell us a little bit
Right.
more about the 2.0 version now.
Well, tantric body de-armoring essentially is designed to prepare our bodies for going into tantric experiences. And, for a lot of us, our nervous systems aren't ready for these expanded orgasmic states of consciousness, like these deep meditations where we, go into these pleasure states for extended periods of time. And so the tantric body de-armoring is designed to support our bodies and our nervous system to be ready for those experiences. Like most people's nervous system can only tolerate small amounts of pleasure. And, like we have peak orgasmic experiences where we use friction to generate that experience, and they may last for, 5 seconds, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. They're very short. And then there's a collapse and a finish.
Mhm.
But to go into these expanded orgasmic states that are a deep meditation, like that can be for 10 minutes, a half an hour, 1 hour, 2 hours, these, long states. And our bodies need to be prepared for that. Like, like going to the gym, you start out at the gym if you haven't been for a while and you feel sore for a while and you can only lift small weights. But if you keep on going back, you slowly build up more and more strength, and your body feels better at the end of a gym session rather than sore. And so the de-armoring is kind of like that. It's preparing our nervous system and body for these profound experiences, because it's very easy for people to get overwhelmed and for their nervous systems to sort of burn out if they go from 0 to 100 in a very short space of time. And so in the de-armoring sessions, we do a lot of practices to understand how to cultivate and circulate energy through our bodies in a grounded way, how to release physical and emotional stress from the body so that it supports our body moving into higher vibrational experiences without any disturbance happening during that. And we also explore a lot around relationships. I created something called a relationship map a long time ago, and we use that in the retreats to really have a deeper understanding of power dynamics and lots of different styles of relationships that we have: friendships, family members, intimate relationships, friends, etc. And so, because to me, if we're going to be exploring sexuality, we also need to be exploring relationships at the same time. I can't separate them anymore. And so the retreat is a blend of exploring relationship dynamics, exploring releasing physical and emotional stress from the body to prepare ourselves to go into these expanded states. We do all different types of meditations that support us to learn how to cultivate and circulate our sexual energy. We have a lot of fun. We do a lot of dancing. There's lots of things that happen on a retreat. But, as you were saying, 2.0, I think it's done in a much more grounded way. And actually nowadays, I think it's a much more deeper experience and more powerful experience for people because it is much more grounded in the types of things that we were talking about earlier.
I'm so excited. And it's going to happen May 1st through the 5th, 2020 in Sarasota, Florida. So you're going to be in my hometown area.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
We have a beautiful beach called Siesta Key Beach, and it's one of the #1 beach in the U.S. if you don't count Hawaii. When we count Hawaii, we're like number 6.
Okay.
But we have a beautiful beach that is crystal quartz sand beach. It's white, it's powdery. You're gonna love it. All participants are gonna
Sounds
love it.
beautiful.
When they go on a break, when they go, it's like literally our center's 5 minutes away from the beach. So it will be a beautiful
Oh,
experience.
wow.
Yeah, so I'm really, really excited to have you back and hopefully bring you back again to the US and for Sol y Luna Tantric Shamanic Festival for 2026.
Wow, that'd be
That
amazing.
would be nice to have you back. And actually, while you were talking, I was like, whoa, maybe Betty Martin too. Like, that would be such a
That
great
is amazing. She's such a wise, intelligent being. Yeah, I can't speak highly enough of her.
Yeah, that would be beautiful. So
Yeah.
to wrap it up, Andrew, where can we find you? Where can anyone interested on your accountability process or work can find you?
Yeah, if they go to my website, andrewbarnes.org, there's an ethics page, and that takes them to Safe Mediation, or they can Google Safe Mediation. They have their own website, and that has all the information about my accountability process from start to finish. And yeah, they can read about it on my website and also read about it in Safe Mediation's website.
And you have also been writing amazing articles about for facilitators, for tantric facilitators, for participants about tantric body diamorin, their origin.
Yeah, I've written some blogs. I felt it was important to put some information out there about what I've learned in the hope that people will learn from my mistakes rather than making their own. So yeah, I've written several blogs about accountability and de-armoring and different things like that. And I'm going to keep on doing that. I think it's really important to keep on putting information out there.
I highly recommend everyone to read those posts. Really, really insightful and educational at the same time. Well, thank you, Andrew, for joining us today. I really appreciate you, appreciate the work that you are doing and gone through the whole process and being inspiration for so many of us to be courageous to go through it and learn from your process itself.
Yeah, thank you. I really appreciate your kind words. I'm really touched, and it's amazing to hear, what you're doing with your community there. I'm so in awe of you, and it's so needed. So thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate you. Well, thank you everyone for joining us today and see you next time.